Thank you, Sophie.
Hi, Sophie. What do you got there? Stuffed animal? What is it?
I muted or something.
It's like is that like a goat?
It's a porg from Star Wars.
Oh, gotcha. Very nice. All right. Hello, everyone. Looks like people are starting to chime in, and we're getting some familiar faces. We'll just wait a few more minutes for everyone to get here. So you guys are here right now. You got your fossils for today? Yeah. Yeah, I see that. Sophie's got her echinoderm, which is the fossil that's in the same family as like starfish and sand dollars. And you got your coral. I see that. And then crinoids, right? Perfect. All right, we're going to wait just a few more minutes and see if more people want to join us. Happy 4th of July, guys. For those of you guys who are here right now, we might have a few visitors that have plans. So we might not have everyone today, but that's okay. We record these shows so they can watch them at a later date. You guys liking your boxes? You like your fossil boxes? They're pretty cool. I got one too that I keep out at camp. And when I go out and find stuff, I put them right in my fossil box. So it's my own little treasure chest right here. Let's see. All kinds of cool stuff. If you want to also go ahead and get out your expedition information card, you should have that as well. This is Expedition 3, Marine Critters. We're going to be talking about all kinds of cool stuff. So you guys just sit tight. We're going to take just a few more minutes and see if some more people join us, right? All right, so sit tight. All right. Wait, I see, Stella's there. I see Stella. And here we have Sawyer and Lucy in the middle there. Great. Hi, Stella, Sawyer, and Sophie. Terrific. It's great to see all you guys. Happy 4th of July to everyone. All right, so go ahead and get your fossil box out, right? With your stuff. I see Stella's got her card there, right? And once you again hold up your card, this is Expedition number 3, and we are talking about marine critters. Fantastic. I see you guys all got those. And then you have your little bag with the 3 fossils in it. You have the crinoid, that round weird thing with the design on it, and then that chunk of coral. Go ahead and get those out and just have them ready, okay? Yep, I see you guys got those. Terrific, terrific. You know what? Before we really get started on the fossil stuff, I want to show you guys something. Because a lot of people ask me, how the heck do you use this little magnifying glass? They can't figure out how to do it correctly. So I'm going to show you right now. I think Sophie knows how to do it, right? Sophie's done it. Has anyone had any problems with their magnifying glass? Yeah, Sawyer, can you use yours okay? And Stella, have you figured out how to use yours? Yeah, you got it down? They're kind of weird. I know they're kind of funny because you hold them really close to your eye, right? You hold it really close, and then whatever it is you're looking at, you slowly bring that thing close to the glass. Really close, and there it is. And why don't you first pick up, I want you guys to get out your magnifying glass, because we're going to use that for these, because these are small fossils, and there's really beautiful things on them if we look at them really, really up close with our magnifying glass. I'm going to scoot just a little bit closer to you guys so we can see them together. All right, so go ahead and pick up your coral. That's the first one. That's that weird, almost looks like a stick that's just a piece of rock. Yeah, you got it. Good job, guys. So you got your piece of coral. So go ahead and get your magnifying glass. And we're going to take a close look at our coral. And if you notice in our coral, there's a whole bunch of little tiny holes in it, right? All those little tiny holes used to have little creatures living inside them. And we call them coral polyps. Kind of a funny word, a polyp, right? And here's how coral works. It's pretty interesting. That piece of coral you guys are holding in your hands is the remains of the houses and homes from about 1,000 coral polyps. When a coral polyp, that's what we call the animal, a polyp. They're very, very tiny. And when they're alive, they grow kind of like a shell around them. Think kind of like a snail shell, kind of, but it's built into a wall. So they're this little round house that they make out of proteins and things that grow out of their body, kind of like you guys grow your fingernails. They grow this little shell around them, but they love spending time together. Coral is always in giant groups. Giant. Think about a huge neighborhood, gigantic neighborhood, and every coral has its own house, right? And when that piece of coral, when that animal, that polyp, when it dies, after it's lived its full life, it dies, but it leaves its house. And another coral polyp comes along and builds another house on top of that house. And then it dies and leaves its house, and another one builds its house. So when you're looking at your piece of coral and you see all those tiny little holes in there, those are all little houses from all of these individual coral polyps. And here's the coolest thing. Over thousands and thousands of years, imagine how many polyps live and die and leave their house, and then another one comes, lives, dies, and leaves its house, and all those houses stack up on top of each other, and pretty soon you have a big chunk of coral. But it doesn't stop there, right? It keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing, and pretty soon you have a coral reef, right? Coral reefs are really, really beautiful. Let's take a look at that right now. Now, you guys have seen this picture before, right? This picture of the ichthyosaurs. Remember last week we talked about the giant marine reptiles and when they were swimming all through the ocean. But today we're talking about kind of the ocean itself. All of these beautiful coral reefs. You see this stuff back here? Coral reefs are made up of literally millions of those little polyp animals. They all live and die and leave their shell, live, die, leave their shell. And it just stacks and stacks and stacks. Exactly, Sophie's got hers right there. And it just stacks up. And sometimes coral reefs get really huge, like so big that a ship can get stuck on one, right? And a lot of ships have got stuck on reefs because what they are is like gigantic walls of stone, really, especially after they fossilize. They're like giant stone walls. So you see them around beautiful islands, and they're usually in really, really beautiful seas like this. And here's the really cool thing. These corals, these little coral guys, have been around for about 400 million years. What? 400 million years. That's about 170 million years longer than dinosaurs, right? When we think of dinosaurs as being ancient, and they are, but these guys are even way, 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 way more ancient than dinosaurs. And they've been around a long time, and there's been different kinds. And we find these even right here in Colorado in the middle of the United States because this used to be an ocean, right? And we find the remnants of those coral reefs in our little pieces of coral. And as you work your way driving through the United States, you actually come into an area as you approach Utah. I think it's actually in Utah, and it's called Capitol Reef. And it's called Capitol Reef because it's a gigantic, like the size of a mountain, ancient coral reef from the ocean that was here. And we can still go up and look at it today. So coral is an amazing thing. We see it all over the world in these beautiful reefs, which make these beautiful little areas where fish and gorgeous, colorful sea anemones and fans and all that stuff live in and around coral reefs. They're just an explosion of marine life. They're kind of like, if you think about our United States, they're kind of like New York City. It's just, there's lots of people and lots of animals and lots of things going on and lots of lights and colors and noises and sounds and all that stuff. And coral reefs are a major spot where life likes to hang out. And here's the other cool thing. There's like 2 different worlds for coral reefs. There's the daytime, where you have a whole slew of different fish and animals and things that live in the daytime, but then all those things go to sleep at night. And at nighttime, the coral reef has a whole different group of animals that come out. Sharks and octopuses, lobsters and crabs, they come out of their little cracks and caves and holes, and the reef comes to life in a whole different way. So coral, like that fossil you guys have, is a really beautiful fossil and very, very ancient, very old. So this is a really neat fossil. Initially, someone might look at this and go, well, that's kind of boring. That's not as exciting as like a dinosaur tooth, right? But it's still something very exciting because it is so ancient and so old. So that's a special one right there. All right, now I want you guys to pick up your crinoid stem right there. Is that Cash and Caroline? It is. Hi, guys. They're in Texas. And then who we have on the bottom right there? Hey, Kurt, what's going on, buddy? Nice to see you. Okay, so everyone get your piece of crinoid. The crinoid is the long, skinny piece with all the little lines on it. Now you have that one. Everyone hold that one up. It's a long, yep, there you go. I see you guys got it. Sawyer's got it. Cash, you got yours? Go ahead and pick that up, and it's like a long, skinny rock tube. There you go. Sophie's got hers. Kurt's got his. Terrific. Now these are really weird too. I love marine creatures and these little critters because they're strange. So I want you guys to use your magnifying glass again. So pick up your magnifying glass, put it close to your eyes, and then bring that crinoid fossil in really close, and you can see all of those little lines on that beautiful little fossil. Well, here's what a crinoid is. I really like crinoids. They're really strange. Let me show you a picture of what they look like. Where's my cool, here's my cool fossil book right here. Look at this picture right here. Can you see that? That is what crinoids looked like. And this fossil you have fits right there. It's part of their body. And they're really cool animals. And they got super tall. I'm in a movie theater right here. And the ceiling is probably 30 feet up, at least. Crinoids probably one crinoid probably go halfway to the ceiling. One of these guys would latch himself onto a rock or a piece of floating wood or a log or whatever he could hold on to. He'd latch onto it with some special things on his body, and then he would grow off that. And he would grow and grow. And he would keep growing. And some of them got super, super long. And here's the coolest thing. When you guys look at that picture right there, they kind of look like a plant, don't they? They're not. They're animals. They're really strange animals. They don't have eyes. They don't have a nose. They don't have arms and legs. They look like a giant flower stem, right? Without any leaves or stickers on them. They look like a big long flower. And at the end of that flower, they had these things that feathered like that. And they would wave in the water. They would just sit in the water and swoosh back and forth. And these little feathery things right here would just kind of do this in the water. And every time a little bit of food, maybe a little part of a fish that died a long time ago or a little something floated along, one of those little feathery things would grab it. And it would fold it in. And right in the middle of this little flowery thing is where his mouth was. Believe it or not, it did have a mouth because it was an animal, not a plant. Although I guess some plants have mouths, right? Like a Venus flytrap. Those are pretty cool. Kind of like that, I imagine, but it's not a plant, it's an animal. And his guts, his tummy and his intestines and his heart and everything were in this long tube, the fossil you guys have. And the reason that that survives is because in real life, when these guys are alive, that part right there is made of shell. It's made of a light shell, like a clam shell, but shaped totally different. And of course, when fossils survive, it's usually a shell or a tooth. or a piece of bone, right? That kind of thing. So that's why we find those fossils. And this part usually doesn't survive, but sometimes it does. And when it does, they're truly spectacular fossils. In fact, I'm going to come around and show you a picture of one of the fossilized heads right there. Do you see that go the long, it kind of curves, and then there's that thing at the end, looks kind of like a flower? That's the head on it right there. That's that feathery head. So sometimes those do fossilize and they're really cool. So crinoids are strange marine creatures, or critters I like to call them. And remember I said how tall one of them could get? Well, look at your little piece of your fossil right there. Look at your fossil. And now imagine if one of these was 15 feet tall. Imagine how many of these little pieces would come out of just one crinoid that was 15 feet tall. That's why there's so many of them. We find a lot because even just one of them can make a ton of these little pieces. So that's a really good one. And these guys have also been around for hundreds of millions of years. Long before the dinosaurs ever walked the earth, the crinoids were in the oceans. And you want to hear something really neat? They're still around today. You can actually, if you want to get online with your parents when we're done, Google crinoids, C-R-I-N-O-I-D, crinoids. It's on your expedition sheet. I think it's written on there. Maybe it's not. Crinoids. And there's photographs. You can see what they look like. Now, the ones alive today are still ancient ancestors of these guys. So the ones today don't get quite as big as they did back then, but they're really cool. So you should look at some pictures of living crinoids. They're kind of like living fossils, really, right? All right, so let's put that one down. Now we're gonna get our last one here. Don't worry, we have more to talk about. I'm just going with the fossils you guys have in your book. These guys are from a family called echinoderms. It's kind of a weird name. Echinoderm begins with E, echinoderms. And what these are is these, you guys all got those? Hold those up. They have those little, almost looks like a star on top of the rock. Yep, Sophie's got hers. Sawyer's, I think he's got his. I think Cash and Caroline have theirs. Kurt, you got yours? I think Stella's got hers. So hold that up. Now get your magnifying glass, and we're going to take a close look at this guy, because these are really neat. If we bring our magnifying glass really close to our eyes and then bring the fossil up, you can see all the detail on this cool fossil. Now what these are in the same family as animals like starfish, right? We all know what starfish are. We've seen them on the beach. We see them in stores in and around beach areas. And actually, if you look at the design on top of this, it kind of looks a little bit like a star, right? Because
Stella said sand dollar.
Stella is absolutely right, a sand dollar. It's in the exact same family as a sand dollar. Great job, Stella. These guys are long gone, these particular ones, but they're ancient relatives, sand dollars, you can find today on beaches all over the place. And some of them probably got pretty big. And there's another relative of these that some of you might recognize the name. It's called a sea biscuit. You guys ever heard of a sea biscuit? It's kind of like a sand dollar, but it's much thicker. It's like a really thick sand dollar, but sand dollars are really beautiful. Have you guys ever found a sand dollar on the beach? Raise your hands if you've ever found a sand dollar. They're those round on the beach and they got that design on them. They're really beautiful. So good job, Stella. Yes, this is a relative of sand dollars. All right, well, we're gonna put that guy away. And now we're gonna talk about something that you guys all know about. And it's one of the most amazing sea critters that ever lived in the ocean, because they did a lot more than just sit and eat. They thought about things, and they traveled in big groups, and they got super gigantic. And of course, what I'm talking about is, ta-da, ammonites. You guys remember those things, right? The giant ammonites, and they are spectacular. Ammonites are in the family of animals called cephalopods. Can you guys name a cephalopod? Can you just type in any cephalopods that live today? Think about it. What today looks kind of like that, that's alive in the oceans? Anyone? How about octopus, right? How about a squid? Exactly. Those are all relatives of ammonites. They're in a family called cephalopods. The only difference is ammonites unlike an octopus or a squid, these guys grew their shells. Just like you guys grow fingernails or hair, these guys grew these beautiful shells. And I have a couple of them right here to show you. Here's a couple. They came in all shapes and sizes. There's two right here. This one right here is super glassy and smooth and beautiful. And this one's more bumpy. It's got big kind of chunks on it. You can see the little knobs on the shell. And these guys both had ancient squid living in them. And they would basically, their bodies would be just like this. And they'd have their tentacles. And they'd swim through the water just like that. And their mouth was right in the middle, right in here, right where their body came out like this. They had a mouth right here, but not any kind of mouth. These guys were strange because they had beaks, like a parrot. You guys have seen parrots, right? Parrots have these huge beaks. That's what ammonites had. That's what octopuses have. That's what squid have. They literally have parrot beaks. I mean, they're not parrots, but it looks just like a parrot beak. And here's another beautiful thing. If I could take this shell and cut it right down the center, right here, cut it, and cut it into two pieces, here's what they look like. They are one of the most beautiful fossils to find in nature. Because if I cut this open, here's the outside of it, right? Actually, if I hold it up against this picture right here, you can kind of see right about there. That's what he would have looked like with his face and his tentacles sticking out, just like that. And if we cut it open, look at this. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Look how beautiful that is. That is an amazing creation from nature. That is like a work of art. And this one has been polished. That's why it's shiny like that. They polished it like glass. But every one of these would have all of these individual things we call chambers. And a chamber is every time it grew, it was outgrowing its shell, it would grow another one and another one. We got some couple questions coming in. What we got?
Said it looks like a sea snail.
Sophie said it looked like a sea snail. It kind of does. You're right. Because like a lot of animals that have shells, Sophie, at the very, very, very middle, way in the middle where that little dot is, that's where it started as a baby. And as it grew, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and kept going and kept growing and kept growing. When this one died, it was living in this chamber right here. And it probably would have kept growing. And here's something really neat. These guys got gigantic. This shell is only about that wide. You can see it's maybe about 10 inches across, maybe 11 inches across. This guy right here, his shell is a couple feet across. And we find fossils this big for sure. But you know how big these guys got? If I could hold my hands like this all the way out, imagine a shell going all the way, my fingertips, all the way around, bigger than this picture. Their shells got almost 8 feet round. Imagine a shell 8 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and 8 feet all around. Gigantic, higher than your doorway, pretty much as tall as your ceiling in your house where you are. Everyone look up at the ceiling and see how high that is. From the ceiling to the floor, imagine a shell so big it could fill that spot, which means the squid or the ammonite that lived inside that shell would have had a head about this big around and an eyeball about this big around to see everything. And they were super smart. And also at that size, they were super hungry, which means not only would they eat all kinds of fish, but you remember the marine reptiles we were talking about last week? Mosasaurs, ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, all those giant marine reptiles, when they were babies or young ones, like juveniles, they would have been on the menu for big ammonites. They could grab them and chew them up in that big parrot beak. How cool is that, right? All right, why don't we go ahead and take some more questions? You guys have any questions about some of these critters? Now remember, there was thousands and thousands of different kinds of critters that lived in the oceans. A lot of them maybe didn't fossilize. A lot of them we have found fossils, clams and oysters, all kinds of cool things like that. There are literally thousands. And today, there's tens of thousands of animals that live in the oceans. And coral reefs today still are beautiful, beautiful centers of a lot of marine activity and all kinds of amazing life. So let's go ahead and take some questions from you guys. We got any questions out there, Lily?
Well, Sophie asked what ammonites eat, but I think you answered that.
Sophie did ask what ammonites eat. So it all depends on what size they were. They're really small. They're meat eaters, right? They're carnivores. Even like today's octopus and squid, they eat fish. They would eat crabs if they could grab them. Pretty much anything they could get their tentacles. If I go like, yeah, right, grab you with their tentacles, anything they could get hold of, they would start chewing on with that parrot beak. And the bigger they were, the bigger the food that they would eat. And like I said, some of them got gigantic. Great question, Sophie. All right.
Stella asked, were the tentacles part of the mouth?
Stella asked if the tentacles were part of the mouth. No, not really. They helped the mouth. Imagine, actually, here's my toy ammonite. I forgot to show you guys. There's my toy ammonite right here. If I open it this way, you can see all those tentacles. It's kind of creepy looking, right? And he had these things right here called claspers. And these were two really long tentacles that had little hooks on them. And he could fire these out like a gun, and it would grab a fish. And deep, deep in the center, right in the middle right there, would be that little beak. So all of his legs were around the outside. It's kind of like if you imagine a flower. Imagine looking at a flower like a daisy. All right, look at a daisy flower. All the flower petals are like the arms. And the center of the flower is like where his mouth was. So those tentacles would grab whatever it is they grabbed, and they would move it into the center where he'd start chomping on it. Good question, Stella. Anything else? Is that it for you guys? No more questions on these incredible creatures? A lot of you guys will go out and go fossil hunting for sure. And keep your eyes open because not everything is small. Some things are gigantic. I want to show you one more fossil real quick here.
Stella has a question.
Oh, Stella's got another question. What we got?
So, I've been watching Star Wars, and there's this creature called a Rasa, and by like the way of his mouth, it's this right here, and its tentacles, it kind of reminded me, and to look like the mouth and like the tentacles.
Well, you're probably right, Stella. I bet that the people that made the movie, that Star Wars movie, probably took the idea for that creature from like an octopus or a squid. Because tentacles, if you think about it, they're kind of scary. I mean, as long as it's a little teeny one, it's not going to bother you. But if it's a super giant octopus or a super gigantic squid, their tentacles can be 20 feet long and this big around and super strong with big suction cups to grab things with, right? Now, thankfully, those giant ones live way deep in the ocean, and they rarely ever come to the surface. But I think that's probably where they modeled that after, Stella. Great thinking right there to connect those two. We got one more question. Okay, go ahead.
Sophie asked, could a T-Rex eat an ammonite?
Sophie wanted to know, could a T-Rex eat an ammonite? I would guess absolutely. If a T-Rex was wandering in the water, maybe it's wandering along the beach and the water maybe is up to his middle of his legs and he's just kind of cruising along and he sees a big ammonite maybe in the water, that movement would attract his attention. He probably would grab it. I would not be surprised if every now and again a hungry T-Rex would wander into the water, maybe looking for a fish or a little crocodile or a little turtle. And if it saw an ammonite, it certainly had the strong enough mouth to crush that shell. No problem. T-Rex had one of the strongest bites of any animal in the whole history of the world. So that's a really interesting thought, Sophie. I bet the answer would be yes, because all meat-eating animals, no matter when they lived, if there's any kind of food source in front of them, they're going to at least try to eat it because that's what they do. They're always hungry. So I bet somewhere in history, there was a T-Rex that at least tried to eat an ammonite or did eat an ammonite, for sure. I think it's a terrific question. Here's a fossil right here. You see those ridges on there? If I hold this kind of like that, you see these little lines? This is part of a giant shell from a clam. You know what a clam looks like, right? They open like this. Only this clam was about this big. It was a gigantic clam called Inoceramus that lived during the dinosaur times. And this is just a little piece. So if I hold it like this, imagine if the shell continued all the way out here, all the way down here, came up the other side and connected right there. That's how big one of these clamshells would be. So we find all kinds of cool stuff. Any more questions? You guys are awesome. All right. Make sure you join us next week. We got all kinds of cool stuff to talk about. You have your expedition cards. Get your boxes ready. We're going to look at some neat stuff. And I want you guys to have a wonderful 4th of July. Happy 4th of July.
You too.
And go have some fun. And thank you very much. It's great to see all of you guys. I love that we get a chance to do this. So make sure you keep the questions coming. Put your thinking caps on. And we will talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.